And when I say staff, I mean cross-sector staff. So these are 5 agency staff who meet about every other week or 3 or 4 weeks to talk about Raise Up Oregon and how it's going from all of the different perspectives. And just as a reminder, it's OHA, DHS, ODE, and housing, along with the early learning division. So we'll have a progress report on that. And then we will be meeting our 5 agency directors will join us for the last half of day 1. We're just meeting 2 half days. We can't Zoom for 8 hours. So we're meeting for 2 4-hour afternoons on the 27th and 28th. The agency directors will join us for the last part of day 1 to talk about their early learning priorities in their own agencies, both policy and budget-wise. And then the council will meet the next day on Wednesday and talk about priorities for that we want to send to the governor. And a part of Wednesday's agenda will also be a report from the Racial Justice Council's Education Recovery Committee. And I don't know if you all have been following that or not, but it's a relatively new committee that is looking on the Education Recovery Committee. They're looking at everything from 0 to, higher ed. So part of what they're looking at from a racial justice perspective is what would early learning priorities be. So someone from that committee, or perhaps Alyssa Chatterjee, will be coming to the first part of our Wednesday meeting in the probably around 1 o'clock to present what that committee of the Racial Justice Council sees as priorities for early learning. And then the council will continue to talk about priorities. So that's what we'll be doing. If any of you want to call me or send me emails and tell me what you think the council ought to be talking about for those 2 half days, I always welcome your input. You guys are really on the ground. You're all over the state, and would really, really appreciate your input at any time. And the other thing I'll just throw out, just for you to sort of be thinking of looking somewhere down the road in 2021, one of the community engagement strategies that the council is going to be talking about is potentially holding 1 or hopefully 2 town hall meetings in 2021. And obviously we would be having those meetings outside of the Portland or kind of Willamette Valley area, trying to get to Eastern and or Central and or Southern Oregon to just be sure we're getting that broadened view of what's going on in early learning. And once again, it'll be cross-sector, making sure that our 5 partners are, with us and helping get people coming to the town hall and engaged and in breakout rooms and all of those logistics. But we would certainly be relying on you hub leaders to help in those efforts. So once again, your partnership and your input would be really valuable in that effort. So I think that's it from the council. If you've got any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them, or you can always email me, just suemiller500@gmail.com. I think many of you have that already, but thanks for the work you're doing. And thank you, Carmen. There you are.
Start taking the time to be here for that. Okay, so does anyone have any follow-up on that? Okay, so moving along, there are gonna
Denise, I'm wondering if Carmen's connectivity is such that we should move on. I think.
She's frozen.
Yes.
Are you there, Carmen?
No, she's literally frozen.
Frozen. But she's off mute.
Okay.
There-
sorry, my connection went out right as I thanked Sue, and then that was it. The last thing that I was trying to say to you before you all froze beautifully was thanks to Sue, and also we're just moving along and we've got more reports to talk about. So Joan, if you want to jump in and fill everyone in a bit on the budget note report, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to join Sue in I think wanting to do some, I've been, I don't know how all of you are feeling, but it's, I don't think that I could have predicted this is where things were going to be when we all left the offices about almost now 8 months ago, which someone said, and I was like, what? That can't be true. Just acknowledging how challenging a time we're all living in. I think everyone that I know's daily life has been completely disrupted. I'm guessing that's true for most all of you. The solace that we might have gotten from work has been disrupted for many of us. That's become very difficult, our ability to connect with others. And during this time, we've been I feel like we have been in some kind of high-speed, multifaceted vehicle where we are just trying to keep childcare operating safely, and we're trying to figure out how to, change all the services that many of which you all were also very invested into distance provided services, and just a lot of challenges, including the opportunity that came with the expansion of Preschool Promise and the other early learning services, and also the challenges that came with that, which I know that all of you are living through, the changes in your roles, the coming on of new roles. And I want to acknowledge all that because I feel it between us all. I feel it between us all. And I want to be clear that we very much value our work with all of you, as Sue talked about. And we understand that we're all operating kind of at the edge of our own angst and stress. And so thinking about, what does a report like this mean, and what might it mean for our work together, and all those things, like that's a natural reaction. And I think I'm just the kind of person I would just rather put that out on the table and say, what I really want to talk about today related to the report is going to probably feel kind of perfunctory because, as I said, we've spent many, many months with our heads completely down, trying to keep a lot of things open and operating just like you have. And so we are only in the last few weeks really turning our attention towards where are we headed? What is this going to mean for us as an organization as far ahead as we can see? So in terms of this report, related to the budget note, we still intend to submit a report as of today, October 6th, by December 31st, as we told the legislature that we would. Just to remind everyone, we did submit an interim report last February where we provided I would say, relatively basic information in response to the questions and the premise of the budget note report. And we said in the executive summary that one of the things we wanted to be able to do was to do some further stakeholder engagement and some further exploration around questions before we felt like we would be prepared to come back. And so we just last week were able to confirm some additional capacity of some individuals that we're going to be working with to help us complete this report. So we're going to be working with a consultant that's going to be helping us do interviews and stakeholder engagement, including with you and with families and with childcare providers and CCR&R directors. And we are going to be working with an individual that's going to help to support us with some of the writing of this report, to basically take information that will be gathered and help us to pull it all together. And we're also going to be working with another consultant that's going to do a literature review of the best practices and the research associated with entities like CCR&Rs and early learning hubs, because as you all know, you're not the only entities like this in the country. You know, we've got states like North Carolina that have been invested in early learning hub-like entities for 25 years. And we've got states that are founding these new entities as a part of their PDG grants. So there's been a long history of that. And through that literature review, also to help to put on paper some theories of change. You know, what is it that we're really trying to make happen? What do we understand from the literature, so to speak, about what really helps to support the kind of change we're trying to make happen with the CCR&Rs and the hubs and through our collective efforts. We also imagine that the report is going to include some fiscal and budgetary analysis that will probably be performed internal to ELD. And of course, will include recommendations. We are at the point where we don't have a calendar of stakeholder engagement yet to share with you. But we will be meeting, in fact, with the person who's going to take primary responsibility for that on Friday, and hopefully we'll have a calendar soon to share with you and to talk with you about. And it's our intention to use which I know we're going to talk soon about the structure of the monthly meetings going forward, but that we'd be having this as an ongoing agenda item when we come together to talk about where things stand with the report, and then also to, if things, anything that needs to be updated between these meetings, we would provide via email. So our goal is to be in open communication with you about this report, so you understand what's going on and where we are in the process of completing the report. And I think in a follow along to that, I just want to say that it really is so valuable to us when you're able to, come directly to us with issues and concerns. And I want to appreciate the fact that through this process that we've been in, where there's just been so much going on and so many challenges, that at times I think that it's felt like people were waiting a long time to get questions answered, or that you were having to support providers in situations where people needed more immediate information and they weren't able to get it. And I want to acknowledge that that is challenging, but it is our goal to really be able to be here and answer questions that you have. And not that you need any reminder, but that Denise and Carmen really are devoted to supporting you with any kind of technical assistance that you need. And we know that there's many challenges that are brand new that none of us have faced before. So I really hope that you feel that you can reach out to them at any time and that, you know, they are a direct line to me and I have a direct line to Miriam. So I just want people to be clear that if you have issues or challenges that you're worried about related to the work you're trying to do right now, that we want you to share those with us so that we can be involved in trying to get upstream of solving those. We think that that's really important and a part of us really working in partnership together. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you about the report and to be able to also reaffirm what I hope will be open communication going forward, both related to the report and also to the implementation of Preschool Promise and other things that we are going to do together. So I am very happy to take questions. I don't know that I will have answers to all the questions, but I'm happy to hear those. And then if there is anything associated with this report that you think you really want to make sure, you know, if you're giving us advice about things you want to make sure we're considering, as Sue said, we always want to hear what your input is about that. And so I'd be happy to take your input now, or you're welcome, of course, to email me or call me with any input that you might have associated with the report. And if people want to raise their hand or unmute, it's up to you if people have questions.
Joan, there's a couple things in the chat box as well.
All right.
So there's a question from Brenda about if there's a role for our governance board, and if so, some idea of timing and what you're hoping from them.
I think we're imagining that we would want to have either focus groups and or interviews with at least a sampling of governance council members. And like I said, we should know more about that soon, but I would anticipate that that would be taking place in November and potentially early December, depending on how quickly we're able to get organized. And we have quite a number of stakeholder interviews and groups that we want to do. So like I said, we really need to get our schedule nailed down, and then I'll be able to give you much better advice about, and of course we'll share communications with you about expectations or hopes associated with talking with governance council members.
And then there's a question about, before we take your question, Adam, because I think Carmen and I can address that. Bess is asking, do you have a sense of what questions will be asked during the stakeholder interviews?
I think we want to understand what families' experiences are using the early learning systems that you all have been working on building. I think we're interested to understand what childcare experiences are, what it's like for providers to find out about, access, and use services provided by CCR&Rs. Those are big buckets of questions that we're really interested in exploring, particularly with childcare providers and families.
And then Adam, your question in regard to the Supporta hubs. Yes, we are, Carmen and I are working our way through being in contact with each of you of how our new level of support is going to work. We did not just hand it off the way that Sue and I were doing it. And so that's happening. So you'll be hearing from us. We're setting up meetings individually with each hub. So expect to hear from us in the next couple weeks about that piece. And then, of course, if you have specific questions in the meantime, I've still been connecting with folks as needed, particularly around the operations pieces.
I have a question, Denise.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Hey, Joan. So thanks for kind of laying that out. It was helpful to hear the goals. One of the things that strikes me is that sounds like the input that you're looking for related to hubs and also from R&Rs is really kind of service delivery focused, like hearing what families experience on the ground, and also from childcare providers. I'm curious, it kind of goes back to a question we've had for a long time about role. And so there's, at least for me, coming like back in the day, there was so much of a focus around systems and cross-sector integration. I mean, it's part of the big three things that I always talk about whenever I'm talking to people about what I do. So I'm just wondering if there's any focus on talking to community partners who maybe have been able to provide additional services that impact families, but families may or may not fully understand how the behind the scenes work has impacted the direct service delivery, but it has because of the integration work that we've done or the systems work that we've done. So I know I see you nodding and nodding, so I want to give you a chance to say something about that. But I guess there are two parts of the question. One is that a part of what this checking in with folks could involve? And then secondly, would it be wise for us to think that moving forward, we're focusing more on the connections to family or where that integrated support kind of fits into this whole thing? And maybe that's something, Raise Up Oregon is going to help us understand better too.
Yeah, I think the way that I have always understood it, and having gone back to the very beginning in the hub documents world, back to work groups that Sue Miller was on, to look back to the original RFAs. Like,
yeah, I staffed that thing. Yeah, I remember that.
I've read Miriam Polk's original application that they submitted. I've been very immersed in the last few weeks on really trying to go back. I mean, from the very beginning, the systems work, I think, was understood in some ways as a means to an end, right? The system being family-centered, aligned, et cetera, that's about being able to have better outcomes for children and families. So when I talk about wanting to better understand, and I would call it the customer experience, what is the customer experience like for people, for families, and for childcare? I think our interest is in understanding, like, what you're talking about is revealed in their experience, right? The integration that you've been working on should be revealed in their experience. If they were easily able to get referred from one service to another and they didn't get stuck or they didn't find a dead end, then that tells us something about what's going on in terms of systems work in the region. And of course, I think we would want to understand that the knitting together that's been happening, because of course that's a very important part of the systems work that's happening. So if you look back at the budget note, I mean, part of what we are really charged to be able to report back to the legislature are essentially the kind of benefits that would come together by a closer relationship between the hub and the CCR&R. Like, what would emerge potentially from that would be a benefit, and what wouldn't be made better by something by that? Like, what would be potentially a negative impact of a coming together of the hubs and the CCR&Rs? So at a very high level. So
thanks. That adds a little bit more kind of depth to understanding what you're thinking about. I appreciate that.
So Joan, this is Lisa, and in the report, are you thinking that the ELD will be making a recommendations, or are you going to be? Do you see this as a report saying here's the pros and cons of the systems coming together or not coming together?
I don't know that I could say definitively, but it certainly could include all those things.
Okay, sure. And then I'm also curious too, because I think this is the magical year where hubs have to be recompeted by the contracting rules. And so I'm curious how that is going to play into the report to the legislature and what that is there.
I think that the report will help us, will help inform that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
This is Molly. Do you think that the report will take the place of the evaluations that we've done at the end of the bienniums the past couple times?
Actually, the report will probably include some sort of what I would call sense making of those. I've read all of them and I've done some analysis, but I'd like to have some other people looking at those because each one of those included findings and recommendations. You can kind of track, you know, from the first legislative report in 2015, and then there was the time one monitoring report, and then there was an evaluation report, and then there was a time two monitoring report. So there's a variety of things to be drawn upon to help inform some of the content of the report. I mean, I would consider that part of what I would call the literature review, right? Those are documents that have been produced that were written to help shine light on, you know, what, you know, this is what we intended to do. This is what is happening. This is, you know, what we think is contributing to that. These are the things we think that might ameliorate some of the things that didn't maybe seem as on track as we wanted them to, you know, et cetera. So I think they're important sources of information, along with potentially some of the other more historical documents that help to establish, like, especially for the hubs, like an intent, right? There was a theory of change that was essentially articulated of like, we're going to create these things to do this work and we're going to realize these outcomes. And so I think this is an opportunity to say, like, you know, what's been realized in some sense. But that is, I mean, the majority of the report is really, you know, again, we're answering the questions of the budget note. That's the primary purpose of this.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think I was in part also wanting to know, maybe it's a Denise and Carmen question, whether we're doing an evaluation. Or maybe I'm mixed up, but we've done those before where we've had to get input from surveyed all of our people and all that. And is it time for that again? Yeah.
The monitoring, yeah. I think this is our off year, and then next year will be the monitoring year.
Time has gone crazy. All right, thanks.
Yeah, don't rush that, Molly. That's next year.
Okay, well, I really appreciate, again, just to encourage you, if you have other thoughts you would like to share, I hope you'll feel, you know, you're welcome always to reach out to me, or of course to Denise and Carmen. And we'll plan to give an update next time we meet. And if we know more before then, we'll be sure to share it with you directly.
Hi, this is Jillian. I did put a comment in the chat box. I wondered if it's possible to look at it and discuss it.
So Jillian's question is it possible for the hubs to have input into the community process design?
I will happily take that question back, Jillian.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions about that? All right. Francis, are you pointing at us or raising your hand? Just saying hi. All right. Let's see. So we're going to move along. So yeah, I wanted to talk to everyone about change that we're going to make to the structure of this meeting. And hopefully
Carmen, I'm wondering if you could turn your camera off because you're freezing up again. I'm going to send her a quick note because this is something she needs to talk about, not me. Hang on one second, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Okay, Carmen, it looks like you're back, but we lost you there. Maybe if you turn off your camera. Are you there, Carmen? She might be trying to call in, so just hang on one second.
I just moved to a new spot. Can people hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. I pretty regularly have meetings from where I was sitting and don't usually have that problem. I'm going to leave my camera off for now. Try to eliminate as much technology problem as we can. We did want to take a look at, Denise, can you, I think when I lost my connection, I lost my screen share ability.
Yep.
Will you give that back to me so we can look at the meeting schedule?
Sure will. One second.
Great. So the community system team has been talking a lot about the way that we're using all of our meeting time and our meeting time with you. And our director meetings set up, structured in the way that we have our meetings with you structured. And we've come to a place where we feel like so much of what we're talking about overlaps and should overlap with things that we're talking about with the R&R system, that we'd really like to limit this, our bi-monthly meeting, to having one meeting that happens the first Tuesday like we're doing now. And that would be our general update meeting, the way that just like this meeting is. And then having on the third Tuesday, instead of doing a meeting that's just specifically to hub directors and leadership, that meeting would be expanded to also include the R&R directors. So we would all be in the same place and have a time to talk on a more in-depth and even more regionally specific at times level about some of the work that you're all doing. And specifically, and we've gotten some really good feedback from some of you about wanting to use time in these meetings to look at issues around equity and the way that we're implementing equitable practices, ways that other hubs are implementing equitable practices, and what how that might be shared across hubs. So let's see if this works. So that's what we would like to do moving forward on these third Tuesdays. I know that represents a change in a time when we have a lot of change already. But this is something that we're all pretty excited about. And actually, after having the last week and a half of meetings on coordinated enrollment and being in those meetings with a lot of you and with Anne, and then hearing back from Denise and Anne about how the meetings I wasn't a part of went, I've just been really impressed with the amount of advocacy that people are doing. I just heard so many questions about the best way to serve our most vulnerable children and families, and really like incisive questions dealing with like data and how to know if our goals were being met and things like that. And I wasn't surprised, because that was the impression that I had been given of the hub, of you all, of the hubs and the work that you're doing before coming in. But I was actually pretty inspired by that. I may have a lot of notes that have like advocacy underlined on our meeting notes. And so what we're looking at doing with this block of time is taking those kinds of questions and those kinds of topics that you are raising and bringing that to the forefront in a meeting in a way where we can really have cross-pollination across all of our regions to see like what's working over here and how can that be used over here. And then also being able to have direct TA training or facilitation of conversations around some of those topics, whether that's by ELD staff, whether it's by some of you, whether it's with some of you and your staff who have had really successful projects or initiatives, or whether it's bringing in facilitators from outside the ELD, so people that we know from around the state that you know who are doing really great work in the community. And we really want to focus in on practices specifically. So not, I'll tell you what I'm thinking it won't be first. But as I was saying, you know, no one on this call needs the basic like equity is important and here's what it is kind of conversation. We're all way beyond that, right? Like we're looking at like how we're implementing in everyday decision making, in how we're working equity into our investments that we're making into partnerships, how we're supporting partners in their initiatives to further racial gender equity based on ability. It's a lot of talking, sorry. Yeah, but that's what we're looking at moving to. I'm gonna pull up my screen so people can see that schedule again.
So Carmen, while you're doing that, this is Lisa, and I'm wondering, did you say that the CCR&Rs were going to be joining us for the first Tuesday meeting?
They're going to join the third Tuesday.
The third Tuesday. I'm thrilled that they're going to join us. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited about that addition. I know that, you know, we're all working across all those systems, but what our goal is to be able to have you in the same room, if you will, with the R&R directors from your area in order to be able to have some focus time together, so that as we're talking about what these practices are, whether it's you know, like staff communication and retention across like intercultural situations, or like how we're using our data, that you'll be able to have that CCR&R partner in the room with you so that you can really be on the same page and have time also in breakout sessions to talk about like, hey, how would this look like where we are? Okay, so I just pulled up the meeting schedule. So just really loosely, this is what it will look like. And we'll just be alternating in between that first Tuesday and then that third Tuesday on the bottom. And I know that there is a conversation going on between some of you directors about what kinds of topics you want to talk about around your practices, and how to make sure that what you're doing is furthering equity goals. So we're really happy to hear from you what those topics are. If you can reach out to me directly with that, that would be great. We're definitely still building what the schedule will look like for those topics. One other thing I wanted to say is that one of the goals that we have is to, other than just doing like kind of like basic practices, but also to look at the kind of the flow of the work through the year and try to look ahead so that we can plan for, you know, like for example, if we're talking about like kindergarten readiness initiatives, that we would do that ahead of, have that conversation about that ahead of when you would start doing that, taking on those initiatives more full time during the year, so that we can use these meetings as a way to plan, be planful about the work that we're doing. Other questions? I'm gonna look at the chat box. Okay, people are glad that the R&Rs are included. Great.
Good question.
Yes, Molly, I did
also-
get yours. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
I'm just wondering if you're going to mention the coordinated enrollment meetings, unless I missed that.
Yes, no, you didn't. Sorry. And can you want to chime in on that and tell us about that piece?
Sure, yeah, just recognizing, I think, particularly as we're all starting on a lot of coordinated enrollment and enrollment for preschool promise specifically, having some dedicated group time to come together, both so I can share information and also so that we can bring up, unique issues or promising practices that are coming out of this. Just wanted to have a dedicated time to do that. I'm looking at, based on the availability that you all provided on the survey, probably breaking into a few cohorts based on the size of the region or some regional, similarities and things like that. And we'll be sending invitations this week to try to start a regular time for us all to come together in those cohorts and have members of your staff represent for the coordinated enrollment work. So we'll still have time to do that, but be able to keep these meetings more focused for directors and on the larger hub and now CCR&R conversations.
Sorry. Just checking the chat box. It looks like Molly mentioned that she sent me the equity action steps. I did get that and have started chatting with her a little bit about that. And I think, Evan, you had some thoughts about that too that I wanted to loop back to you on as well. So again, if your things are coming up in conversations with staff or R&R directors that you're like, I'd really like to talk about this and share some practices that we've come up with that I think others would appreciate. Really like to hear about that. And the other way too, if you're finding something that you feel like you might be on shakier ground and you want to hear from others what we're doing, that's great. And then we're happy to pull in outside expertise also to add to the conversation.
Hey, Carmen, this is Francis. When are we going to start this new schedule?
We're going to start right now.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So yeah, that's what we're doing now. So then the next meeting will be joint meeting. Thanks, Adam, for bringing up the coordinated enrollment piece. I think I jumped that when I moved from upstairs to downstairs. Other questions?
Hi, this is Jillian. I just wondered if, as we have these conversations, if we can kind of set the stage and if together we can, if the Early Learning Division can share its vision, coming up currently and coming up, what its vision is of the Early Learning Hub system and its vision of the CCR&Rs separately and together. And so the roles. And so that would be really helpful, I think, to lay the foundation for the discussion.
Yeah, I think I think that will be really helpful to know. And that's definitely very much tied into that budget note exploration and report that we're talking about too, is understanding that.
I think we know in the hubs and the CCR&Rs think they know, from history and currently, but it would be so helpful, especially as there's a retreat of the Early Learning Council and the Early Learning Division is working on this and Raise Up Oregon. What is the vision from now and moving forward? That would be so helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. And also I think, you know, talking about how to work to share that vision out broader than even just between those of us right in the system, but out into the community and helping them see and recognize and understand the work that you're all doing. Both in garnering support and helping people use our services. I mean, the more that the public can understand the value of early learning, I think the more support that we get for it, and the more usage of the services that we're promoting. So yeah, I definitely agree that having
Hey, Carmen.
Yeah,
this is Krista. I'm happy to jump into this vulnerable space just for a moment and say, I think the other side of the coin, at least for me, of what Jillian is saying is that my experience of these calls and historically is that there's some ambiguity about the functioning or the roles around the hubs. And so there's a little bit of there's a question like, do you all have a vision about where you're going and you're kind of keeping it under wraps, or is truly this process designed to bring a bigger sense of awareness, and can we be involved in that if we have a sense of what that bringing communities? Is that something that we can contribute? There's just this space of not knowing, and it seems like these questions kind of get it gets really quiet whenever we ask about them. At least that's my experience. It may not be accurate. So I appreciate earlier encouragement for us, and maybe this is somebody needs to talk to me about after this meeting and not here, but I just, I'm gonna go ahead and step out with this level of transparency in hopes that you all can hear, at least from me, even if it's none of my other colleagues, but just to say, like, there's some ambiguity, and it would be helpful to hear from you all where we're headed.
Can I just would like to chime in and say that I appreciate the vulnerability of putting out how people are feeling. I think that's really important. I really think still in place very firmly. Sue, please feel free to say differently if you think differently, but I believe that Raise Up Oregon still really represents pretty fundamentally the vision for the system. Obviously there's a lot of things that have changed. And of course, as you said, the council is going to be selecting its priorities. And of course, the division is, continuing to move forward with priorities too, and we have to be responsive. And I think there's an element sometimes, Krista, which obviously we can talk more about individually if it's helpful, but that sometimes responsiveness in emergent situations can feel like ambiguity, but it's actually one of the important functions of entities like yourselves, is the ability to actually be responsive to changing conditions. And in some ways, it's a little different than with R&Rs, who I think, come with a more defined, like standards of excellence. You can go to Child Care Aware of America and you can see it's like very structured how they're supposed to operate and what the outcomes they're supposed to produce. And, it's different. And I appreciate what you're saying, which is like, we might feel too much ambiguity right now. We would maybe like less ambiguity. I mean, you're just raising the issue. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and I appreciate your answer, because it's kind of what I've been clinging to is Raise Up Oregon in the absence of that. In fact, we've been interviewing our board members with getting their input about all of those priorities and where they see themselves. And now we'll do some planning, in a week and a half about what that looks like. So we're definitely moving in that, and I'm sure my colleagues are. But the affirmation to hear you say that still is intact, and that's the vision, and that's where we're going. I don't know that I've heard that level of clarity. And so I would like to extend my thanks for hearing that and also for sharing that affirmation, because I think there's plenty of work within that plan to keep us all busy for many some moons to come. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I might just add that, Joan, you're right on as far as Raise Up Oregon. That is going to be the focus of the council retreat. That is going to be what this update and progress report shows. And just the preliminary sort of updates I've seen is that, you know, a lot of the progress has been made on goals 1 and 2. And that's where you've got programs and services and, you know, some funding that came in. And where we've seen less tangible progress is in goal 3. And of course, that's where the hubs live, sort of. So I think you're going to feel there's some ambiguity at the council level as well, Krista. I don't know if there's comfort in numbers, but I think we're all in that world together and trying to figure this out. And our partners are sitting there with us. So just so you know, we're all kind of at the same point, I think, in this.
Yeah, that's super helpful. The more affirmations I get about being in ambiguity together, the better I feel. So thank you very much.
Okay, I just got a text from Carmen and she's still having connection problems. So I'm going to have a quick peek at the agenda, see where we're at here. I actually think we're close to the end, folks. Which will be exciting to give you 30 minutes of your life back here.
I see double thumbs up from a variety of people, so I don't think anyone can fight on that.
Good. So clearly we have, we'll have lots to share in the next week or so, in the next couple weeks, in getting prepared for our meeting on the third Tuesday. We'll talk about schedules because clearly we're going to have some timing things too at the R&R. So more to come on that, as well as what Anne talked about with getting you all set up in these cohorts for the coordinated enrollment work as well. So you'll find some more information on that, as well as we continue our phone calls with you. And Carmen and I will be reaching out as well to be having joint meetings with each hub just about what our check-in schedule is going to be going forward. So with that, I will go ahead and close out the meeting today. I have recorded the meeting, so Carmen will follow up with you with the recording of that and information about the upcoming meeting. And so I hope you get to enjoy. If you're in a part of Oregon that has sunshine today, enjoy it while we can. The rain is coming. And wishing you all a happy fall and look forward to talking to you in the next days and weeks. So thanks, everybody. Take care.